I spent the last 1,000 hours tearing apart the daily habits, private shareholder letters, and hours of raw interview footage of the world's richest 1%. Going into this, I assumed I'd find a unified personality type, a specific breed of hyper-aggressive, ultra-genius workaholics who just happened to strike gold. But the data hit me with an uncomfortable reality check. The ultra-wealthy don't all share the same personality. Some are painfully introverted, others are volatile and erratic, and some are quiet, methodical mathematicians. Personality isn't the anchor. Instead, the real difference between someone grinding paycheck to paycheck and the top 1% comes down to a shared set of psychological money frameworks. While the average person is taught to solve financial problems with brute physical effort, the richest 1% solve them through a highly specific 5-part behavioral matrix. Today we are going to look past the surface-level advice you see on social media and break down the exact patterns the ultra-wealthy use to view, build, and multiply their wealth. Pattern 1. The transition from income to pure ownership. The average corporate professional in America is conditioned to chase a high income. We are told to climb the ladder, secure a $150,000 W-2 salary in a city like Austin or Chicago, and use that cash to fund a lifestyle. But the richest 1% know that a salary is a financial trap. It is taxed at the highest rates, and the moment you stop trading your time, the cash flow drops to zero. The wealthy do not think in terms of monthly salary, they think exclusively in terms of equity, assets, and control. Look at Jeff Bezos. 4 decades as the CEO of Amazon, his base salary was famously capped at roughly $81,840 a year. He didn't accumulate hundreds of billions of dollars because of a bi-weekly paycheck. He did it because he owned a massive percentage of the underlying engine. This mirrors the foundational philosophy of classic asset building. The rich do not work for money, they create and acquire vehicles that work for them. When a consumer gets a raise, their first instinct is to increase their spending, buying a $70,000 truck on credit which immediately depreciates. When a 1% operator gets a capital influx, their immediate instinct is to buy back their own time by purchasing cash-flowing assets or equity that appreciates while they sleep. They understand that wealth isn't about what you take home in a paycheck. It's about what you own that requires none of your physical labor to grow. Before we dive into how the 1% manipulate time itself to double their net worth, if you want to master the actual psychological frameworks of money without the generic advice, take a second to hit that subscribe button right now. We break down the deep dive wealth strategies every single week that the traditional school system completely ignores. Join the community and let's keep going. Because understanding that you need to own assets is only the first step. The real test is how you handle the brutal timeline it takes for those assets to mature. Pattern 2. Aggressive patience and the myth of overnight success. The modern financial world is obsessed with speed. People want the quick side hustle, the explosive stock option, or the real estate flip that makes them rich in 6 months. The 1% view this short-term desperation as a tax paid by the poor to the rich. The deepest commonality across Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, and Bernard Arnault is an almost unnatural level of patience. Warren Buffett famously noted that the stock market is essentially a mechanism designed to transfer money from the impatient to the patient. To prove this, consider that over 90% of Buffett's multi-billion-dollar net worth was generated after his 50th birthday. His late business partner, Charlie Munger, doubled down on this by stating that the first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. We see this same pattern in luxury tycoon Bernard Arnault, the mastermind behind LVMH. Arnault didn't build his empire by chasing current fashion trends. He spent decades systematically buying up heritage brands when they were vulnerable, waiting out economic cycles because he knew true value takes generations to peak. Even Biz Stone, the co-founder of Twitter, spent a decade in relative obscurity, dealing with massive credit card debt and failed projects before finding massive success. He later reflected that timing, perseverance, and 10 years of trying will eventually make you look like an overnight success. The 1% do not panic when an investment stays flat for 2 years. They build a thesis, plant the seed, and refuse to dig it up every 5 minutes to see if it's growing. Pattern 3. Ruthless reality over emotional comfort. When the average investor watches their portfolio drop by 20%, or when an entrepreneur sees their revenue decline for 3 consecutive months, emotion takes the driver's seat. Fear, denial, and wishful thinking step in. People avoid looking at their bank accounts, or they hold on to a failing investment just hoping to break even. The 1% operate with a psychological mechanism that values cold, hard truth far above emotional comfort. Ray Dalio, the billionaire founder of Bridgewater Associates, built his entire investment philosophy on what he calls radical truth and radical transparency. Dalio summarizes his life formula as reality plus dreams plus determination equals a successful life. He asserts that pain plus reflection equals progress. If something goes wrong in the market or in a business venture, the 1% do not look for scapegoats or comforting lies. They dissect the failure like a scientist looking at a lab report. Bill Gates echoed this exact sentiment when he warned that success is a lousy teacher because it seduces smart people into thinking they can't lose. Gates kept Microsoft dominant for decades by constantly searching for vulnerabilities in his own business model, obsessing over what was true rather than what felt reassuring. When you look at a $10,000 mistake in your life, do you make excuses, or do you adjust your psychological model to fit reality? The 1% know that wealth does not eliminate the need to learn. It heavily increases the financial cost of being wrong. But once you can look at the brutal numbers without an emotional reaction, you are finally ready to play the game the rich play every single day, the game of calculated risk. Pattern 4. Managing asymmetric risk versus playing for safety. Most people are taught that the path to financial security is to avoid risk entirely. Get a safe job, put money in a traditional savings account, and don't make waves. The problem is that playing it completely safe in an inflationary environment is a guaranteed way to slowly lose your purchasing power. The 1% do not avoid risk. Instead, they hunt for asymmetric risk, scenarios where the potential downside is strictly limited, but the potential upside is virtually infinite. Mark Zuckerberg famously said that in a world that is changing really quickly, the only strategy that is guaranteed to fail is not taking risks. But look closely at how he takes them. When Facebook acquired Instagram for $1 billion, critics called it an insane gamble. To Zuckerberg, the downside was losing $1 billion, a manageable hit for his company at the time. The upside, however, was protecting and scaling his multi-billion-dollar social media monopoly. The risk was highly asymmetric. Elon Musk approached the launch of SpaceX and Tesla with the exact same mental model. He calculated a 90% chance of failure for both companies early on. He didn't risk his capital blindly. He structured his finances so that even if the ventures failed, he would personally survive to build something else. But if they succeeded, they would completely redefine global transportation and space exploration. The average person sees a $5,000 investment to start a side business and only focuses on the fear of losing that $5,000. The 1% look at that same scenario and think, the absolute worst-case scenario is I lose $5,000. The best-case scenario is I build an asset that generates $200,000 a year for the next decade. They don't avoid the gamble. They just refuse to play games where the odds are stacked against them. Pattern 5. Building machines instead of exerting pure effort. If you are working 70 hours a week to make your money, and the moment you take a 2-week vacation your income drops to zero, you do not own a wealth system. You simply own a highly demanding job. The final, and perhaps most defining pattern of the 1% is that they do not view themselves as the engine of their wealth. They view themselves as the architects. They build automated systems, leverage capital, and assemble teams to do the heavy lifting. Jeff Bezos didn't scale Amazon by packing boxes faster than his employees. He engineered a massive corporate infrastructure of logistics, software, and management that operates entirely independent of his daily input. Similarly, Ray Dalio automated the investment strategies of the world's largest hedge fund into a programmatic algorithm, a machine that processes market data and executes trades without needing human intervention or emotional biases. You can apply this exact same 1% framework to your personal finances right now, even on a modest budget. The 99% spend hours every month manually paying bills, stressing over when to invest and trying to use willpower to save money. The 1% set up a financial architecture. They automate their accounts so that the moment a paycheck hits, 20% is automatically swept into broad market index funds, their bills are paid electronically, and their capital is deployed into wealth vehicles before they ever have a chance to spend it emotionally. They take human error, fatigue, and willpower completely out of the equation. Summary: the identity shift. The top 1% are not fundamentally different from you because they stumbled upon a hidden financial secret. They are different because they have spent years repeating a few uncommon, highly disciplined money behaviors until those behaviors compounded into massive momentum. They shifted their entire identity from a consumer who chases short-term income to an owner who engineers long-term assets. They prioritize reality over emotional comfort, seek out asymmetric opportunities, and build scalable systems instead of relying on pure physical effort. True wealth building is not a matter of luck. It is a predictable byproduct of the mental frameworks you choose to operate by every single day. If this video shifted the way you look at your own financial journey, Share it with one person who needs to break out of the paycheck to paycheck cycle, and make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of wealth. Take action on one of these frameworks today and build something you own.